Good evening and welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. Got Eric Naline, Justin Wells, Drew Kelson, James Hayden. Thank you for joining us on Wednesday night. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, help us march to 10,000 subscribers, and also head to InsideTexas.com today. That's where you will get the best scoop on Longhorn football, Longhorn recruiting, Longhorn everything. And we always like to go, Justin, to the Inside Texas members only message board. If we get a few questions there, we like to start there. And our guy, Tor Hookham, asks a really good question off the top. Is Texas still talking to Dallas Wilson, a wide receiver 2025 class? What's the answer to that one?
Yes, sir. They are still talking. It's relatively small. You know, they've kind of, Chris Jackson and him have kind of built a little bond there, but I don't think it's anything more than staying in touch with each other. I don't think Texas is pushing. I don't think Oregon has any reason to be worried. But I mean, from what I understand, he has more conversations with Dallas Wilson than he does DeCorian Moore. And so, just to give you an idea of where that recruitment is, they still talk, but I don't see him. I don't see any movement from that right now.
With that wide receiver, you have obviously Khalil Lockett, Jamie French. You obviously posted something as well about Michael Terry. He'll be making a trip to Austin this weekend, just off the heels of another trip, maybe on the heels of another elsewhere. What were some of the things you got to learn about Terry and his trips?
Yeah, I think that Nebraska trip moved the needle a little bit for those guys. I mean, the atmosphere was fantastic. The fans really came out, and they watched Nebraska really humble Colorado. And that's Big Red going back to their old days. They're trying to recoup those days. And so I think Michael Terry, I think it moved the needle a little bit. I think Matt Rule has done a tremendous job. They've made that guy feel like he is the number one target on their entire board. At the same time, I think Michael Terry in Texas still makes a lot of sense. He's really close to home. His family absolutely loves the fact they can go to a game, a camp, or make a visit and be back on their couch to watch the evening news. That is actually a big deal to his family. His family still connects with Texas players' parents. His dad's very thorough, asking questions, checking on stuff. And so I think the Nebraska trip was good, but I think Texas can kind of wipe that possibly whenever he gets on campus on Saturday.
Speaking of guys, Eric, that's a player in Michael Terry. You have an RPM in for. You and Justin also put in an RPM today. We know we're going to get a lot of questions about this guy, so we'll knock it out right away. Zealous Hicks from Carrollton, Georgia, currently a 2026. You predicted Texas, you and Justin both predicted Texas to make a move for him. He decides tomorrow. What can you tell us about Zealous Hicks?
Yeah, I think he's going to end up picking Texas tomorrow. It's not really one that you followed this one closer than me, Joe. As oddly as that sounds, you were talking about him way before I was. I'm like, all right, Joe's got a handle on this one. But once you guys mentioned he had a decision date, I got to kick it into hyper gear and start asking around. And everything I heard was pretty positive in Texas's favor. We didn't go with a super, super high prediction, 60%, just because, we don't know that kid as well as some others. He's in the class ahead. He's a Georgia prospect. So 60%, we feel good about it. Texas feels good about it. I don't know that Texas thinks it's a done deal or anything. So we'll see. That would be a really good get. The talk about him reclassifying to me is most intriguing because there's time for him to develop. He's got a chance to redshirt next year. They got Xavier Phillips to me that's going to take another jump. Jelani McDonald coming back. Derek Williams and Taft. Jordan Johnson Rebel. And maybe I'm not going to say it for sure, but maybe they go back to the portal and try to replicate the success they've had with Andrew Makuba so far. So that's definitely one to watch. Hey, we got one here about Javian Hilton I'd like to handle while I'm on. I can only stay for a little short while. The only reason I really didn't put in a prediction for him to Texas is because it's going to play out for a while, and there's a bit of a wild card nature with him. He's a Florida kid. Again, I don't know him like I know if he was a Texas player or somebody that. Some of the guys that just visit a lot where, we started watching Derek Williams in the spring before we come in. We're like, okay, this one's real serious. Javian had a very good official visit. It's worth watching. I do think Texas is the favorite as of now. Steve Wiltfong, I think, was right to put in a prediction if he feels like it's going to hold steady. But I think Texas right now, but it could change down the line.
I got to talk to Hilson at the airport right after his official visit, and he liked Texas. And one of the first things he mentioned, and this is something Justin and I got to address on our recruiting info video a couple days ago. But the first thing we asked, what stands out about Texas? What do you like? He said culture. So that really I thought was a positive. And to go back to Hicks, he's seen Texas and seen Texas coaching up close and personal. He was there in April 13th, I think, for a scrimmage. He was there on June 1st at camp, got an offer then as well. And he has family in Dallas. I believe his aunt is on the Texas Board of Criminal Justice, former Dallas County attorney. When we interviewed Hicks, he mentioned maybe getting some of his family out to Texas. So that's a factor in that one. So that just hits some of the high notes from a question on the Inside Texas message board. I want to get to another one from the board, and that comes from NBW629. He asked, after 2 games to digest, would you care to change who you think leads in sacks, rushing yards, receiving yards, and touchdowns? Drew, I don't have your picks from earlier in the season, but after watching a couple things off the bat and just quick hitters, do you have new leaders or new picks for these categories?
I mean, I think it should be obvious to a lot of us. I won't say there's anything new. I mean, the only place I'd say where there's something new is maybe with Colin Simmons. I think it's definitively different seeing him get off the ball and move tackles on those known passing downs. I don't know what it is, but he just looks different doing it amongst all the guys that I've seen do it. So I think we were all a lot of us were leaning Trey Moore to start off, but I just don't. If it's not Trey Moore anymore, I mean, I don't know how you deny Colin Simmons coming off that edge after what we've seen. Everything else is still, I don't think we've seen enough to really change off of that, but that's about where I sit. What about you guys?
Somebody speak up if I'm wrong, but like we all kind of said Jaden Blue. Anybody want to change that? No?
Not yet.
Not yet.
He's one turn ankle away from not being the leading rusher. Here's our problem. We have a limited sample size, not just because they've only played 2 games, but because they rotate so much. So we have no clue for a couple reasons. I would still stick with Bond on receiving yards. Touchdowns, Matthew Golden, seems to be really, really comfortable with him in the red zone. And that's an interesting one to watch. But, it's too early to change. There's only 1 sack on the entire team. Isn't that right? It's only Colin Simmons. They've got a number of pressures. You'd like to say whoever has the most pressures right now is going to end up leading them in sacks, but that's probably not the case. I think that most pressures probably comes from maybe Broughton. I'm not sure exactly.
Colin.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Colin Simmons might be a worthwhile pick if they, the more they play that not 12 personnel, if they play base defense, Colin might be out there a little bit more. It's an interesting thing to watch, but it's a good problem to have.
Before we keep going, that's another thing that I think you may be able to make that type of season-long projection over on Prize Picks. If you play $5 on Prize Picks and you use the code Inside Texas, you get $50 instantly. They've also got a promotion running this month where Caleb Williams has a half-yard square. So you can pick more or less on Caleb Williams and get that along with something else in your entry. I think Caleb Williams is going to pass for 1 yard in every game. So that's no expert prediction, but I've seen enough from the
watched him last Sunday.
I've seen enough from the Bears on that square. And guys, I'm going through some of the squares I have paired with that Caleb Williams. Garrett Nussmeier, more than 1.5 touchdowns. Jalen Daniels, more than half a touchdown. And Jalen Daniels, more than 30 receiving yards. Here's another one for tomorrow night. Jordan McLeod at Texas State in the Academic Powerhouse Bowl, more than 247.5 passing yards. So those are my Prize Picks squares. Make sure you head to Prize Picks, use the promo code Inside Texas, and receive $50 guaranteed once you play $5 in lineups. Make sure you head to Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. With that, got a lot of different questions on here that we want to get to. Justin, like this one in the recruiting sphere from our guy, Brett Nelson. Would Texas still take Kelshawn Johnson's commitment today?
I'm going to say they would. I think they really like Kelshawn. I thought they liked Kelshawn back in the spring, when we thought that there was a good chance he would be in this class. And then it sort of went in a different direction. I think A&M really sold him on being an electric, dynamic guy that they don't really have. And for Texas, the depth chart was kind of used against them a couple weeks, into the season. And Kelshawn, I think he started to look at that a little bit more. So that's one that Eric and I are actually kind of digging in on, as a matter of fact, today. I do think Texas would take Kelshawn Johnson.
There's some talk down in that direction that he's paying close attention to what Texas is doing. It's true that Texas was in pretty good shape with him throughout the spring, early summer. But I'm honestly paying more attention to that recruitment now than I was then. So we'll see. We're going to keep investigating that one. We got a lot of people down there. Like I said in the Q&A on Inside Texas yesterday, they might flip two from Hitchcock. They might be able to get Kelshawn and defensive tackle Malcolm Simpson. So those are both recruitments I'm paying close attention to at this time. There's not a ton. They're starting to fill that class out a little bit. All these ones that have any little intrigue, we're going to start hitting them pretty hard.
Yeah, James, I'm not going to ignore you. I appreciate you jumping on, and I'm curious from what you've been able to watch with Texas and maybe even some other teams. And thank you to our guy Helio Castillo for this one. How do you guys feel about the tablets and helmet communication? Anything that you've noticed from the helmet devices, whether offense, defense, or anything to note from the tablets on the sidelines?
I think with a guy like Sarkisian, who's got an NFL background, I think if anything, it's helped a lot, especially when you've got Quinn in year 3 of the system. I mean, he looks so smooth, and so far, like under pressure, he's looked elite. I think that was something a lot of people didn't know about Quinn, but throwing on the run, he is great. I mean, he showed that against Michigan. The helmet communication, I haven't noticed it, which is good, means it hasn't been a problem. We've seen a lot of guys doing this in games this fall. So it seems like a lot of kids are struggling with the in-helmet communication on the road. But Texas didn't seem to have any problems with it. And I think the tablets are only going to elevate Quinn more. And Sark, I mean, he's obviously used to that because the NFL's been using tablets for years. I think if anything, it's going to make the offense more prolific and help them kind of widen that gap with some of those other teams because they've got, a coach like Sark who's got NFL experience.
Drew, what would Gene Chizik have told you in your helmet?
It's funny. Chiz wouldn't have told you anything. What's funny about Chiz? Chiz believed in coaching hard during the week and having you prepared, but on game day, he is like he was, because he would sit in the box. He wouldn't be on the sideline. He would be up in the box, and so I'd sit on the sideline and have headphones on, and I would talk to him up there. He was the calmest, coolest, just, hey, Drew, this is what we're looking at next series. Just lock in. I need you to come downhill and hit that gap a little bit faster. Like, he would just give you your pointers, but he would stay so composed. He was the best. It was almost like put a battery in your back, programmed you, and you just went out and did it. So I can't imagine having that in my ear on multiple plays throughout every drive. But, Chiz would definitely have made the most out of it.
One thing. What would it sound like with LC selling Lux bathroom remodeling in the helmet comp? Because I got to tell you, I don't think I would hit as hard. I would feel relaxed, like I'm at a spa. So there's got to be a happy balance there.
You're gonna need to blitz in the A gap and make sure that you really take on the guy in the hole really well.
That's baby making helmet comms there.
Yeah, do some ASMR, sweet nothings in the ear of the linebacker.
One thing about that is, I think we may have seen this on the TV copy as well. Like, there are still assistants gyrating and holding signs. Like, Quinn gets the signal, but the guys are still looking for it from the sidelines, especially if they go at tempo. So it's still there. I think Sarkisian was right to downplay it some, but it's helped, and I'm wondering how it'll help over the course of the season. Like this question from Chris Bennett: how is Ann Arbor? Eric, you can answer this one too because you were in the bowl a little bit more than I was. But I compared it. If you've ever seen, and this is weird, but it's the only thing I can compare it to. If you ever seen a basketball game at Fog Allen Fieldhouse at Kansas, everything is focused on what's going on the court or field. There's not any ads or anything like that. It is all about football. And that's what I thought the Big House was like. It is a big stadium. It gets up when they are in that game. They weren't up for very long, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was college football at its peak. Curious what your thoughts in the stands were, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, well, the whole trip was great. It was like a bachelor party, except that nobody was getting married. It was a football game. It's just a really good time all around. The locals were great. The restaurants were fun. The atmosphere for tailgating was vibrant early in the morning. People were ready to go. I ran into two prominent parents of players. Man, it was like 7 in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning maybe, and they were already there hanging out, taking in the sights. Ran into well-known former Michigan wide receiver, the well-dressed Amani Toomer. Took a picture with him. That was just a great time. I really loved it. And the fans were great in the stands. You know, we had a lot of the guys after the first couple drives, they're kind of looking back at us and going, we know where this is going. And we're like, yeah, we know where it's going too, man, but we're going to keep it cool. Yeah, it was a good time. I enjoyed it. And, you know, it was real live early. It had all the yellow out. Yeah, it hit all the marks. I'm glad I went there. I started thinking, man, I've been to a lot of these pretty good stadiums by now. As far as atmosphere goes, and I was at Notre Dame, Michigan long ago for a night game. That was fun, but it was actually a little bit more docile than I was expecting. Tuscaloosa last year was a lot of fun. Been to LSU, a few more that are really good. Michigan was right up there with everybody, and I heard that they were kind of a laid-back crowd, which is not surprising. Texas kind of has had that reputation in the past. I think the fan bases are quite similar, but they were up for that game until, you know, Texas came out and started handling them pretty easy early going.
James, did you see that?
No trash talk before the game?
I mean, I didn't. There was not much. Maybe some friendly banter in the stands, but it was good natured. I think a lot of Michigan fans were kind of resigned to their fate. They weren't the message board fans that we saw talking, or the Twitter fans that Michigan had talking earlier in the week. Once it's live and you got to answer for it, people start acting a little different.
James, I'm kind of curious. Did you see the clip? I think Josh Pate posted it. If you've never seen the clip, it's the Texas locker rooms right here, the Michigan locker rooms right here, and they are right side by side. And the Texas locker room is just waiting. Did you see that? And did you just kind of think like, oh, this one's over? That may have been before the game. That may have been halftime, but just curious your thoughts on that clip.
Yeah, I thought it was at halftime. Does anybody know?
No, it was before the game.
I'm not sure.
It was pregame.
Before the game.
I mean, noted little Boosie fan, Jamerson there.
I do stand on it like a man. Yeah, I mean, I love that because it just kind of seemed like they were just ready. And I think they know, because a lot of times fans don't know before it happens. They go, what happened? I mean, Sark probably knew, and the staff probably knew, like, we beat these guys at, like, of the 22 starters, probably 18 of them were favored for Texas, right? So, like, they had size, they had athleticism, they had speed, they had quarterback. So they probably knew, like, we can beat these guys down if we really want to. And I think there is kind of a different energy around Michigan. They don't have the same stars. So I felt that, and then obviously the new coach, I felt that they kind of knew this isn't going to go our way. That was the vibe I got from that video. That's why I thought it was at halftime, because I thought, oh, it looked like Texas was big dogging them already. But, yeah, I guess that was before the game, which kind of set the tone for what was to come.
They should save the OU pregame for Super Gremlin by Kodak Black. That's what I want to hear in the tunnel. Because that means it's getting real.
Just keep Boosie going. Boosie's working for him.
If you're my age or maybe older, you cannot misspell Boosie's name because he learned it and Wipe Me Down. Drew,
two things about that real quick though. That in that video, but you can go to my Twitter and find it if you don't follow Josh Pate. If you follow Josh Pate, you might follow me, or vice versa. I've got it. And the two things that stood out: that girl dancing beforehand, that was awesome. She's probably a trainer or a comms person, I don't know, but she was feeling it more than any football player. And then if you peer in on the inside of the door, they had a picture of Freddie Steinmark. It looked like. It's got a nice mix of old and new between Boosie and Freddie Steinmark. Just how I'm sure they were jamming that BKR and Freddie Steinmark days, but I thought that was a real good mix of old and new. Of, you know, you got this younger generation, but you're still hoping that they appreciate the guys that came before them.
Justin got a good recruiting question. Minor misspelling, but Joseph Mbachu. What are the chances with he's the Florida commit, correct, from Georgia?
Yeah. He's the Florida kid. He's the teammate of 2025 Texas commit Nick Brooks at Grayson. This is the kid that might have the most upside of all the defensive linemen remaining on the big board. Just a big moldable thing of clay. Family from Cameroon. He's just now getting into football. I mean, just unbelievable size, like 6'6", 280. Just ready to grow and develop. Really good sense of humor. Hasn't been jaded by the recruiting process. Sometimes when kids start getting those offers really early and it drags out over 2 or 3 years, it's a little overwhelming to them. This kid is bright-eyed. He is feeling it. He's got family and friends that have been telling him about how great Texas is, and he's wanting to know, is Texas really as big as people say, and is the barbecue is legit? I think he's going to learn on Saturday.
Going to keep on going. And Eric, we can get you out of here on this one as we talk about Zealous Hicks. I think from our guy Roaster, that would be viewed as a big win over Georgia if he were to choose Texas tomorrow, correct? What are your thoughts on this one?
So I mean, go do what you need to do on the internet to celebrate it. If he picks Texas, but it doesn't sound like Georgia's pushing all that hard, and that probably has something to do with them potentially reclassifying. It's certainly not a talent issue. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Let's give Georgia the business on the field and worry about recruiting later. But that kid's a good player. You want him in the class. I like the fact that he has time to develop. Another athletic piece. Pair him with Jonah Williams. Jonah's going to play early. This kid's probably gonna have to wait his turn a little bit, sort of like Phil Smee's doing this year. I wouldn't worry about it. But I mean, if you want to go on Twitter and rub it in their nose, go for it.
Just as far as at least guys on 3 has as true safeties, there's only one. But Kirby Smart knows DBs. There are a couple athletes in the class. I have Jonte Gilbert in that class, so we'll see what it makes sense. And if he does go 2025. How does that fit along with Jonah Williams?
Well, I mean, you got a replacement for Cade Phillips. That's basically what it is. That amounts to. And Cade Phillips, I think, was going to be a longer curve guy while he develops physically. This kid's going to need some time to develop physically. I've heard he's 18, so that's graduating age. But when you look at his build, he's a little longer and leaner. Let's put him on special teams and see what he can do early, and then develop him. The staff has been great at developing him. There's no more crying about the DBs all of a sudden. The safety room finally caught up with the rest of the roster. I think it was the last to be properly addressed. And now all of a sudden, Blake Gideon's a good coach. Terry Joseph's a good coach. Now he's got 2 good corners, and Jalen Gilbo's balling. So, just give these guys some time. That's a good replacement to me for Cade Phillips. Now go get another corner or 2, probably 2. I think the number at DB is going to end up being 5. This class is coming together.
If Devontae Davis were to play safety, Hicks is more explosive, but that's what I see. If Devontae Davis would have ever moved back to safety, again, Zealous is more explosive. He's got more twitch to him, and probably a little bit more fluid. But that's kind of what his tape reminds me of Devontae's from high school.
I like that Zealous is already playing safety because a lot of fans want to project a guy to safety just because he has the bigger body type. We've seen that with a number of players that it doesn't necessarily work out that way because of the cerebral aspects of the position. If it worked out just putting a badass athlete there, Keaton Crawford would probably be starting in Texas' secondary right now. But I like the fact that Hicks is already playing safety. It'll be a good get if they can pull it off. I got to run, guys. I do appreciate it. I'll be on a couple more times this week.
See you, Chief.
And make sure, if you are still watching, like this video. We've got over 100 on YouTube, over 1,000 on Twitter. If you're on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're over on podcasts, make sure to give us a 5-star rating and review. Guys, did y'all catch, just to go north of the Red River for a second, did y'all catch Oklahoma and Houston?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Just
James,
I only saw a little bit.
If you, would you do the same thing our guy Sandman is doing here if the Green Wave go up to Norman and take care of the Sooners?
Guad's got some great thrift stores, but might be a good place to. There's already a lot of interesting characters down there, so it might be a good place to go for him. But I wouldn't make that kind of bet because it looks a little more probable as the weeks are going on. I mean, they didn't have the most impressive display against Temple. They put a little window dressing at the end to make it look better. But and then Houston, and this is not, if you're a casual, Houston's had great teams, but this is a rebuild right now with Fritz. So that was, I think the offensive line questions are very pressing, more so than ever after a couple games, and Arnold's decision making doesn't look great. So I'm not going to make any promises, but I'd say it looks good because that game is such a roll of the dice. But with OU, it's I think this is not going to be one of their better years.
I saw this comment from hi, I'm Boo Corrigan. Michael Hawkins will start for OU by the end of the year.
Whoa,
if that happens, then
buddy.
you need to start the countdown clock on Brent Venables.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
They have done so much to hand the keys over to Jackson Arnold that they are going to give him every opportunity in order to do what he does. So barring injury, I don't think they're going to try to change things up to Michael Hawkins. Even though they just got that contract extension for Brent Venables, that means something is like even worse in Norman than I think anybody in Austin.
So you're telling me Ian Boyd was right all along?
Damn it,
Ian. Damn it, Boyd.
When's he wrong?
No.
Drew,
listen, hey,
go ahead.
Can I just say something? Can I just say something on that regard? Like, we've been through this, guys. Like, we know OU lost their center. And their center was a transfer from SMU. Like, we know they've lost a couple offensive linemen. I just want to make sure we keep this stuff in the context because Michael Hawkins would make sense if there wasn't all the things around the quarterback that's already fractured. I mean, you're already fractured when you're having to go to the portal for a center as it is.
Yeah.
So to lose your center to injury week one, I mean, what do you do? And then I think they lost a couple other O linemen. So listen, knock on wood, I think that's tough for any team. I'm not making excuses for OU, and I'm not going to say that I don't relish in the struggle in and of itself. But yeah, there's some injuries that contribute to it. And so I mean, if you go streaking, dude, that's on you. But it probably you got a real shot this week.
That's a salty defense. When healthy, they have skill players. We'll see what happens with Arnold, but he does not have the offensive line right now.
Joe, what year was it when Dominic Espinoza went down the first game? Was it 2012 or 2014?
It was 14 because it was Strong's first year.
Strong's first year. That O-line was bad. He was the most consistent guy. Yes, and he was the best of a bad bunch. When he went down, we learned really quick how valuable the freaking center is on an offensive line.
Drew, I'm going to go right back to you. There were expectations for the O-line this year, but seeing these guys play against an elite defense that just dominate, what are IT's thoughts? These guys are good. What are your thoughts on that one?
I mean, Sark does enough from a schematic standpoint to give his guys some breaks on plays, just depending on how he's getting rid of the ball. So, but the O-line has shown up great for them so far this season. Sark helped them out a lot against an elite defense, and so you have to account for that. And Sark will continue to help his offense out against an elite defense. Just not running at one of the best DTs in the country helps a lot. So, but no, these guys have been solid. They're a great unit. What's crazy is to see the last couple of weeks of just having leadership on the offensive line win awards within the new conference and just get some recognition. So, I know Cam Williams last week was PFF offensive lineman or something of the week. And then I know this past week, Jake Major. So we're starting to see accolades all across this roster, which is really cool. But the offensive line, we have to maximize having this experience this year. I cannot understate that. We have no idea, regardless of the talent, what we're going to look like next year. Yeah, we have to maximize it this year. I mean, so yeah, offensive line got to keep it rolling and thank God right now that they're playing really well.
Yeah, all those class of 2022 guys are coming of age, like you mentioned. James, I'm going to throw this to you. Drew mentioned Cam Williams. This was his first road start, but it's on one hand, he has 3 false starts, but I'm curious what you thought of the rest of his game.
I mean, after that, yeah, because I noticed in the first half, I think all those penalties were in the first half, if I remember correctly. I think. Say that again.
First drive.
First drive, yeah.
Yeah. That first drive penalty was costly, but I didn't see anybody get on him or anything like that. And obviously, while he's been sitting behind, and you brought that up, first true road start. I mean, he is an upperclassman, so I think he'll be fine. He'll settle back in again this week. And Drew was mentioning he won the lineman of the week or Pro Football Focus. I can't remember what the exact accolade was, but yeah, I mean, I think Cam Williams is going to be sturdy there. It was probably just a little bit of jitters when you see a false start. It's like, hey, he hasn't played in front of 100,000 people on the road before. Last year when they were in Tuscaloosa, he hadn't done that. So I think false starts are typically mental. You'll see Cam Williams. I think he's going to end up, by season end, he's going to be a really good, kind of a pillar of that offensive line. Like, I think he's done a good job for the most part.
This comment's good. This comes from somebody asked Sark after the game, what did you tell Cam Williams after the false starts, after the holds? And Sark goes, well, I gave him a hug. And then DJ Campbell wanted a hug. Then Jake Majors wanted a hug. So I think that's a good sign that you can have the all business sunglasses Sark, but there's also the coach, the fire him up guy still there, not just a scheme and fire and brimstone, but also the fire him up. I get fired up for something, and that is Laura Baker. And LC can tell us about her real quick.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512, or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description, as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
Thank you to LC. Drew, I hate to do this to you, about 19 years ago, y'all went to Columbus, Ohio, won 25-22. Y'all came back the next week to play Rice at home. How did y'all make sure that you didn't let the Owls pull a fast one on y'all after y'all had a big win on the road?
It was Rice at home.
Oh, easy. I grew up a Rice fan in Houston.
This is a four.
I'm only here to get in case I get fined.
What about James Casey, guys?
There are certain teams that I'm not going to say you mail it in on, and we did not mail it in on Rice. We probably, for guys who need to get healed up or had a little banged up, you probably didn't practice till Wednesday and go hard. But on weeks like that, that's a little bit different. I don't know if there's apples to apples for Rice. While we know UTSA is not a threat, I think Sark really cares about the optics. I think he cares about just how all this stuff really looks and how about his team executing. So at the end of the day, that's how you get guys locked in. I mean, this is a game where you can actually tell someone hey, you're getting less snaps because you didn't show up this week. So guys still have to show up. They still want to put something on film. And yeah, I mean, they'll be dialed in. When your team is this good and you feel this good and you have the competition every day, you got to show up on film. The standards there, it just makes a difference.
But
James, go ahead.
I'm curious, back in because you obviously played during the golden age in recent history, very elite teams. So when you guys would have those major games like Ohio State and then come back to play Rice, like you said, it's kind of a tune-up game. We see with Notre Dame, Notre Dame a couple times recently has had this happen. But was Mac kind of one of those guys where it was every week the same, prepare the exact same? Or did you guys find that sometimes you would overlook opponents, or did you feel like it was always playing at an elite level?
No, I mean, I in some ways, I wish we were more consistent in that way, but that's just not how Mac was. Kids coming. Close the door. No, Mac. Mac he would always try to find motivation. I mean, we'd come in on a Sunday and we'd see, or Monday after Tuesday practice after Monday press conferences, we'd always have the paper clippings and just the stats that show, oh, this team hasn't lost in this time, or it's antiquated and it was old. I mean, it was 20 plus years ago. So you did what you had to do to motivate. So you actually use press clippings. At the end of the day, you actually would get some good clippings from Rice, because the Rice players would give you some good stuff. Yeah, we're going to go in there and show them, what smart football looks like. Like so the weeks where you play Rice were really fun. But you can't hide from that Saturday kickoff. So,
in 1994, guys. 1994.
I was around for that one, but
I don't remember that year.
I remember enough of it.
That was the crazy Southwest Conference year, if I remember right. But to that point, Drew, about it
being Rice,
like this is the first time we can say like it's UTSA. It's UTSA without Frank Harris.
Yes.
It's UTSA without Rashad Wisdom. It's UTSA without Trey Moore. It's UTSA without all those receivers that ended up going to Ole Miss for a little while. Like I listened to Jeff Traylor. He spoke after practice today, and man, Justin, I know you've known Traylor for a long time. I don't know if he underplays things or things like that, but he sounded almost despondent. And I put a story over on Inside Texas today, and it basically was, Traylor talking about how there's a major challenge for him. And I'm pulling up the actual quote right now. He talked about how in the past 4 times he feels like his team has gotten its butt whipped, and they got their butt whipped against Texas State. He said, usually this is exactly what he said. We've had, in my opinion, 4 losses where we've had the crud kicked out of us. We've come back and won all 4 of those games the very next week. We've never had the University of Texas the very next week. So UTSA is they are down.
They're in transition.
They're in transition. I think that's a good way to put it.
And he talked about that. I believe it was Sunday or maybe Monday. He talked about that. I actually watched the post game because I wanted to hear what he'd said about GJ in Texas State, obviously his former quarterback at Gilmer. And, they asked him some tough questions, but you could tell he even compared the last time those Texas and UTSA played. He said, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we were the better team. We were a more experienced senior, seasoned team. Texas was in transition and they were still better. And then he finished it with saying, this is probably the best team this UTSA program is ever going to face. And you could just see it's very solemn. Like he understands it. Now, you're still going to get the fight out of Jeff Traylor. He is going to swing hands until he dies. That's all he knows how to do. And these kids are going to come out fighting. They have nothing to lose. This bunch has 0 to lose with their backs to the corner. It's going to be tough, but I got to tell you, the quarterback situation has to fix itself. And so yeah, Jeff, you're right. You nailed it. But my goodness, the team they had a couple years ago was good. That was a good football team. Frank Harris was a great college quarterback. Trying to replace that production has been tough for Traylor and those guys.
We've gone in different directions, right? I mean, they needed everything to make it look respectable against us in the last couple of years, but we're not the same team. Texas is not the same team he's faced, and his team is not the same team. So to go on a DKR and try to get your guys motivated to play against Texas at night, first night home game, coming off of a big win, it's going to be – the guys are going to be fired up. So it's – and then when your backups roll in, it's not any different. It's just waves of getting pounded. So Jeff knows what's up. And he's the nail this year.
He'll call it like he sees it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they're going to go with Cade McCown. Owen. Man, if they went with Cade, maybe they'd have a chance. But
they're both left-handed.
Yeah.
And Owen's from East Texas. He played at Rusk. And of the McCowan East Texas quarterback tree.
And then Oscar Cardenas hasn't had as strong of a season as I think they've anticipated.
He's a future wrestler. You're going to see him in the WWF one day, man, or WWE or whatever they call it now. He's going to be a wrestler one day. He's a freak.
They're beat up on the O-line. Like, I think there's good reason why Jeff Traylor was despondent. So this is going to be an interesting one. And Steve Sarkisian, even on the SEC coaches teleconference today, I asked him about, do you like these group of 5 games with in-state teams? He's like, yeah, I like getting, Texas State, and that Sam Houston's on the schedule. They have a recurring deal with both UTEP and also UTEP and UTSA. Rice is probably going to be coming down the pike again. So he was enjoying that. I bet we'll see more of these games pop up just because we don't know what's going to happen with the 8 or 9 game schedule, and they like having one manageable game. Going to go through to some of the viewer questions before we get out of here. James, I like this one from Chris Bennett. Love seeing the O-line go after Michigan players after they hit Quinn.
Yes.
That's something that Texas lacked for a few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just kind of points to how the culture has changed so much. I'm sure you guys have seen, like, from in the transition in coaches, like, we've talked a little bit about the culture, but like you all probably saw it a lot more firsthand covering those teams before Sark got there. I think that kind of is just a transition and shown how you bring a guy from the Saban coaching tree who, like what Drew was just talking about earlier, he sees every game the exact same, Sark does, and he had that quote earlier this week. So I think that just breeds a culture of, like, players who we'll see, like a couple years ago with Saban. Bryce Young played in the bowl game. He didn't have to play in the bowl game. He played in the bowl game. I think that's kind of the culture Sark's building here, where guys are like, this is not just a team. Even in this era of the transfer portal, like, this is a culture. This is a family. This is a community. Like, I love that too. Like, it's like, this is our quarterback. We will die for him. Like, we're going to go out and battle them, because Michigan prides themselves on being physical. And it's like, all right, well, we've got the bodies now too. And that was really awesome to see. And that was, I think, just a testament to the culture shift that UTS had, because it used to be kind of toxic, frankly. And now things are starting to settle down, and they can put it in cruise control a little bit.
It wasn't long ago, Joe, that Hudson Card was picking himself up off that field in Fayetteville. And, buddy, if you're a pure Texas fan, that was ticking off people. That's the change right there. You can talk it all you want, but we saw it as an example of it. And let me tell you, of those offensive linemen, DJ Campbell is the last dude you want to try to meet in an alley.
I don't think Sark ever wants penalties, but I don't think he minded that one all that much.
I think it was more just about the snap.
Exactly. Question from Dave H. If you had to rank the likelihood of which 2 to 3 defensive tackles end up in the class, which would you go with? Josiah Sharma is in. Myron Charles is in. Justin, it's a 4-person class, 4 big man class. Four. So who are the other 2 you see maybe coming in?
Let's say Malcolm Simpson. Let's say he jumps in, flips from Nebraska. And one more of those Southeast boys. I don't know if it's going to be Kevin Wynn. I don't know if Joseph Mbachu. They still talk to Zion Williams. My personal favorite, obviously. That one's going to be tough. But you know what? I think we need to give Kenny Baker credit. He took a ton of crap the first 6 months on the job because he didn't have the greatest relationships with these kids. Now he's starting to solidify those things. He's starting to build those out. Same thing happened with Chris Jackson last year. He couldn't land any of those early big guys. People started complaining. Then what did he do? He went and got Ryan Wingo. Now Kenny Baker's in that seat, and he's going and taking kids. And I think you got to give credit to Sark for trusting Kenny Baker to do that. That was a somewhat of a questionable hire at first. Now I think we're starting to see it kind of, play out. But secondly, give Coach Baker credit. I don't care if he works with a flip phone. That guy flipped 2 major defensive line targets. They need 4 in this cycle. They're going to get 4, and they're going to really restock that cupboard that has needed to be restocked the last 2 years.
Drew, this one from Run the Ball 34. What's your evaluation of the defensive tackles so far?
They're doing everything we need them to do, especially on key downs. I mean, we've seen Vernon Broughton show up. I think they have a solid rotation. They're doing everything we absolutely need them to do. And my observation, or at least my immediate observation, when we were doing Monday, we did our Monday live, is last year there are certain runs during the game I would look at. It's like, well, maybe last year would have been no game. This year it's 2.5 to 3 yards. Okay, still good enough for what we need them to do. But they're holding up well. I never thought they would be bad. I just knew the only difference was we needed depth. And so once we got depth, I felt really good about what we were going to be doing because, we had senior grown men with a 23 years old yeah, they're ready to eat. So you can't I don't care what team you're on, when you have experienced older defensive tackles, especially in a program like Texas, you're going to be just fine. And so we have everything we need. So these guys are actually doing exactly what I expected them to do.
James, where do you fall on this one? Broughton's been better than AC.
That was actually what I was about to say. I mean, Eric's been giving the Vernon Broughton love all in the offseason in training camp. And, yeah, I mean, Broughton's come to play, and it's kind of what Drew's talking about. It's like these older guys, like they've been sitting around, and now they've got the privilege of being behind Collins and Murphy. So it's like, I mean, there's no better way to put it. They're just ready to eat, and they're just swallowing up the middle. I think they still look good in that front. They're going to be a tough team to run on this year.
Bill Norton looked good. I think Jermaine Lole was going to get the start before Michigan changed personnel real quick, which speaks to what they think of him. And, you know, I thought Bill Norton played well, but I would say, yeah, I'd go with you too. I think Vernon's at least both have played great, but I think Vernon may have had a better start to the season than AC. Justin, if Helm keeps pace, how many wide receivers will he outperform for reception yards? And I'm trying to double check this one. I only think Sanders last year outperformed Whittington. I don't think. What do you think?
I think TDs is where he'll compete for that spot, if nothing else. Receiving yards.
There it is.
Yeah, receiving yards is what it is. But yeah, TDs is where you want to see Helm stand out, and we'll sneak in these 12 to 17 yard just tech catches where he's either catching on the run or he just has a turn and go where guys just lose him. Quinn is going to find him in some spots, and we found him last week, and they'll continue to find him. So he's going to get the yards, but I think he may have more catches and touchdowns than, let's say, he'll be top 3 on catches and touchdowns, I think. If you ask me, maybe not receiving yards, but catches and touchdowns, he'll definitely have the volume to go get it.
Right now, he leads all tight ends in the SEC in catches and yardage. And that's what he told us at the beginning of what was it, August, Joe? What was your goal, Gunner? Obviously, win a national title. I want to be all SEC tight end. That was one of his things he stipulated. And so here's the thing, too. You know, there's 6 receivers that you're literally divvying up balance. If you're a defensive coordinator, now you have to pay attention to the flipping tight end. You were already worried about the tailbacks. You're already worried about the speed on the outsides. Now you have to take precedent over the middle of the field. Yeah. All this does is frustrate everybody on that schedule for Texas.
That's the best part, though, Justin. Being a tight end at Texas, regardless of the talent you have at receiver, you got to eat. Like, you have to get the ball to the tight end. It's a fundamental part of the offense. You're going to eat as a tight end if you have the skill set. There's no way around it. So you're going to, regardless of who the receivers are, the tight end at Texas should be able to perform. Sark loves involving the tight end. You should have the talent at wide receiver to where they get lulled to sleep and you can feed your tight end as much as possible. So Gunnar Helm's going to eat this year. There's no way around that in my book. So, yeah, just keep eating, Gunnar.
I felt bad because I had a buddy who plays college fantasy football, and Joe knows my friend very well. And so he always calls me ahead of time for his drafts to check on Texas guys. And he asked me about Helm, and I said, man, I just don't think they're going to throw the tight end as much this year. They got a lot of other weapons. Buddy, I was wrong. I was real wrong.
Good talk, Justin.
Your poor buddy.
Oh,
he's not an inside guy.
Because Gunnar, you probably could have gotten him at value too, Justin. That was a really good value.
He got him late.
He
could have. I failed.
Failure, man.
God dang, I failed.
Waiver wire. Justin, on this one, what are the odds Texas pulls off the #1 recruiting ranking in 25 or 26? It's all about 5 stars, and it's tough. But I'm curious what you think on this one.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for 2025. I think LSU has a pretty good head start. Ohio State, pretty good head start. Georgia, too. The usuals. I don't know if they can do it in 25. I think they have potential to make it a top 3. It just depends on who they flip late. And like you said, the 5-star factor for 2026, buddy, that's wide open. When you got Dia Bell, the #2 quarterback in the country, and there are guys that have tried to commit in the 2026 cycle that Texas has said, slow down a little bit. Let's let this play out a little bit more. That's in great shape. You're in great shape. So I would think 26 would probably be, if you could target a number one recruiting class. Look at 2026 because the quarterback usually, if you get a really high rated guy there, it kind of follows suit. But 25, I think top 3 is probably going to be as high as they can go in this class. If they flip a couple more 5 stars, it's another ranking.
Can't wait to follow it. Make sure, again, you give us a like if you're here. Thank you, Scott in Texas. Like the video. We've got over 4,000 watching on all our different platforms. We appreciate you tuning in. Last one, we'll call this one a prop bet under like our
Square. I remember Square, Joe. Come on.
This one's a prop bet, though. Who has more yards this week, Quinn or Arch? Justin, you go first. James, then Drew, and we'll get out of here.
Arch is going to start the second half, and they're going to let him pepper the ball around. They want that timing down. Jonte Cook's going to catch him one. Ryan Wingo's probably going to catch him one. I've got Arch. Quinn's got the cannon. You don't have to bring it out every week. You don't always have to get that thing out. Sometimes you can leave it right there. So I think they're going to, test that. Let his arm rest a little bit. Let's see the Arch Manning show in the second half.
James?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll probably be similar to Colorado State. I just don't think Arch will get enough reps to break more than like 150 yards.
Probably not.
Drew?
I think Jarrett Gibson or one of the other running backs is going to end up taking yards from Arch. I mean, at the end of the day, once you get to a safe point in the game, you just want to get your young guys some reps, run your standard plays. And, I mean, I'm not saying – I never want to assume we're just going to throw the ball around the field. But at the end of the day, if Arch is in position, that should mean that we're not really pressing at that point. We're just trying to get out healthy and get to the next week.
Here's a something to consider. If Arch is in – it means Texas backups are in, and maybe UTSA is cycling theirs through. Texas backups at wide receiver are Jonte and, guys like Ryan Wingo. Even Ryan Niblett may get some action. What are those guys going to do on a screen or a slant or something like that against the UTSA second string? So you may not see Arch do like the full offense, but you may see some plays break out just as a result.
I think we're only going to see blue for 2 series, and I think this is going to be the Jarrett Gibson show on Saturday.
Or the Colin Page show.
Colin Page is going to get some run if everything goes well.
Yeah,
he's got his own fan club.
Bryce Chambers, we got to throw him.
This is a good game to test your receivers in a different way. Blocking downfield. We're not feeding you the ball unless you do some work for Jarek or for the running backs blocking downfield, because they need to learn how to do that. And so in order to practice that, you do need to be in a position for your offensive linemen to get to the second and third levels of the defense. I think this is a game that's primed for that. And if you want to test your guys on effort for blocking, let's see what the receivers do this week in the run game downfield. Sark has already called it out, but then let's see who gets fed. I think that'll be a big factor. At least I think it should be a big factor, especially these next 2 weeks, as far as effort on how we block amongst our receiver group downfield. So that's something I'll be looking at the next 2 weeks.
You got to love Drew's meritocracy mindset. That's why he's the man.
I'm with you there. Y'all are all the man, and you are the man or woman if you're watching this video. But if you are, make sure you like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching another great edition of Wednesday Night Live. If you haven't yet, head to InsideTexas.com. Join us, get some great insight on recruiting, some stuff to track in the next few days on the team, also a game to track in the next few days. And we're going to have some great stuff on this channel, not just in pregame, but even in the coming days as well. So, Drew, James, Justin, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com.